was a fisherman's son, kidnapped at 15. Within 10 years, 50,000 pirates answered to him. The South China Sea was his empire. And then, at the height of his power, he turned on them all. In the year 1810, a man knelt on a dock in southern China and handed his sword to the empire he had spent his whole life robbing. Behind him floated more than 200 warships and over 16,000 pirates who answered to his name alone. He was not yet 30 years old. 15 years earlier, he had been a fisherman's boy, dragged screaming from his father's boat. This is the story of Cheung Po Tsai, the captured child who became the most powerful pirate captain on the South China Sea, and then walked into the service of the very men who had hunted him. To understand his rise, you have to begin with how little he was given. He was born around 1783 in the coastal county of Xinhui in Guangdong, into a family of Tanka fisherfolk. The Tanka were boat people. They lived their entire lives on the water, often forbidden from settling on land, looked down upon by the gentry of the cities. A Tanka child owned nothing but the deck under his feet and the net in his hands. His name, in the records that survive, simply means Cheung Po the Kid, a boy without a story the world thought worth keeping. That should have been the end of it. He should have fished and aged and vanished without a trace, like 10,000 others before him. But the waters he was born into were not quiet waters. The South China Sea at the turn of the 19th century was one of the most pirate-infested stretches of ocean on Earth. Around 1798, when he was roughly 15, a pirate fleet swept down on the fishing grounds where his family worked. The raiders took cargo, took boats, and took people. And among the people they took that day was the fisherman's son. The man who commanded that fleet was named Zheng Yi, a pirate of fearsome reputation, born into a dynasty of sea raiders that stretched back generations. Zheng Yi saw something in the captured boy. We will never fully know what. But instead of ransoming him or putting him to the oar, Zheng Yi kept him close, and in time formally adopted him as a son and heir. It is one of the strange turns of history. The boy who was stolen did not break. He learned. He watched how a fleet was run, how captains were kept loyal, how fear and reward were balanced on the edge of a blade. He learned to read the sea and to read men. And the pirate lord who had taken him began, quietly, to groom him for command. By the early 1800s, the pirates of the South China Sea were no longer scattered gangs. Under Zheng Yi and his formidable wife, Zheng Yi saw, the rival fleets had been bound together into a single vast confederation, a floating empire of tens of thousands of men organized under colored banners. The largest and most powerful of these was the Red Flag Fleet, and it was the Red Flag Fleet that Cheung Po Tsai was raised to lead. He did not lead it as a thug. By every account, he was disciplined, intelligent, and unusually careful. He enforced a strict code. Civilians who cooperated were not to be harmed. Villages that paid for protection were to be protected, and a captain who abused that arrangement answered for it. He understood something most raiders never grasp, that a coastline you terrorize once gives you a single payday, but a coastline you govern pays you forever. So he built relationships as much as he plundered them. Coastal towns paid his fleet for safe passage and protection, almost like a tax. In return, his ships left them alone, and sometimes even defended them. There are stories, half history, half legend, of him sharing plunder with the poor, of building and repairing temples along the coast. Whether or not every tale is true, they tell you how he was remembered, not simply as a monster, but as a kind of dark sovereign of the sea. At his height, Cheung Po Tsai commanded a force that would have humbled most navies of the age. Contemporary accounts credit him with hundreds of junks and tens of thousands of fighting men under his banner. His war junks carried cannon, and his crews boarded enemy vessels with a speed and ferocity that left merchant captains paralyzed. His name became attached to the islands of the Pearl River estuary, the maze of channels and hidden inlets where his fleet could disappear. On the small island of Chung Chau, near modern Hong Kong, a sea cave still bears his name today. Cheung Po Tsai Cave, said by legend to be one of the places he stored his treasure. The treasure itself is almost certainly a myth. The fear was not. For years, the imperial authorities of Qing China simply could not touch him. Then, in 1807, the man who had made him die, Zheng Yi, was lost at sea, by most accounts swept overboard in a violent storm off the coast of Vietnam. In an instant, the confederation that held the pirate empire together had no head. By the unwritten law of that world, the fleet should have fractured, and its captains should have turned on one another. It did not, because Zheng Yi's widow, Zheng Yi saw, moved faster and thought further than any of them. She secured the loyalty of the senior commanders, and above all she secured the loyalty of the one man whose fleet could make or break her, Cheung Po Tsai. He became her chief lieutenant, the sword behind her authority, and in time, the bond between them deepened into marriage. The adopted son of the old pirate lord now stood beside the pirate queen as her partner, ruling the South China Sea together. But power that large could not be ignored forever. The Qing dynasty threw its imperial navy against the Confederation, and the pirates beat it, again and again, capturing the emperor's own warships and turning the guns around. So the empire reached beyond its borders, hiring Portuguese warships out of Macau and seeking the help of British vessels. The South China Sea became a slow, grinding war. Cheung Po Tsai fought it at the front. In the great confrontations around the mouth of the Pearl River, his red flag fleet traded broadsides with Qing and Portuguese ships in battles of fire and smoke that stretched across days. He was winning the battles, but he and Zheng Yi could both see the shape of the larger war. The pressure never stopped. The blockades tightened, and a fleet, however mighty, cannot resupply forever when the whole world has decided to close the sea around it. So they did the thing that almost no one in their position has the clarity to do. When the exhausted Qing government offered amnesty instead of annihilation, they studied the offer, and they took it. In 1810, Cheung Po Tsai surrendered. He gave up a personal fleet of more than 200 junks and over 16,000 men. In exchange, he and the vast majority of his followers walked free. And then came the most astonishing turn of all. The greatest pirate captain on the coast did not retire into the shadows. He put on the uniform of the Qing Imperial Navy. The empire that had spent years and fortunes trying to destroy him now commissioned him as an officer and sent him to hunt the pirates who remained. The hunter of merchant ships became a hunter of his former allies, rising through the ranks to colonel, sailing under the emperor's flag against the very world he had once ruled. There is no clean way to judge a turn like that. Call it betrayal, and you are not wrong. Call it survival, and you are not wrong either. He had spent his whole life learning a single lesson from the sea: read the wind, and turn before it breaks you. Cheung Po Tsai died around 1822, still in the emperor's service, on station far from the waters where he had been born a fisherman's son. He was not yet 40. There was no last great battle, no burning deck, no gallows. The most feared pirate captain of his age died an officer of the state, in his bed or on his ship, his pirate years already fading into rumor and opera. Think about the full arc of that life. A boy with no surname worth recording, born on a fishing boat among people the empire despised, stolen by pirates as a teenager, raised into command of the largest pirate fleet on earth, married to the most powerful pirate in history, and finally, an admiral of the empire he had robbed, dying with rank and pardon, when by every rule, he should have died on a rope. History remembers the pirates who went down in flames. It tends to overlook the ones who read the wind in time. Cheung Po Tsai read it twice, once into the heart of the pirate world, and once back out of it alive. If you enjoyed sitting with the story of someone history almost forgot, then stay a while. There are so many more lives like his, quiet, astonishing, and very nearly lost. Subscribe, and we will find the next one together.